You have an amazing time out there. There's so much knowledge to be gained here, so many people to network with. I hope you're taking advantage of it. We have Asia Atwood from Trella Technologies about to present on new training techniques, and she is a mechanical engineer, graduated cum laude from Northeastern, and I can't wait to have you see this. I walked by her booth and I'm extremely interested in what she has invented and what they're doing there at Trella. So as soon as she gets her thumb drive up, she'll start this presentation. And like I said, please try to take advantage of as much information as you can get out of this conference. It's amazing. The people here have been amazing. And like I said, just so much knowledge to be gained. So take advantage of that. And I believe she's ready. So with no further ado, Asia Atwood.
Excellent, thank you. Awesome. Try me test this out real quick to see if it works. Sweet, nice. Pointer, we're good to go. Everybody, first I just want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your day. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing right now, but you're taking some time to hang out with me. I greatly appreciate that. First, before I get into it, I wanted to talk a little bit about myself and kind of a little bit about my cannabis journey. Everybody that you see probably, you know, at the booths, we all started with a story, a journey, and how we got to where we are. I'm an engineer by degree. I didn't think when I first graduated from, you know, Northeastern University that this would be my life at all. So I'm thrilled. I love it. I'm excited. There's so many opportunities when it comes to cannabis, and we're only like scratching the surface. So there's a lot more to do. So what you're looking at is a picture of me and my co-founder. His name is Dre. What you got on the left is a picture of me. Oh, sorry. A picture of me showing the apex of a plant on the bottom left. That's that little pointer right there. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about is for people that are looking for ways to get into the industry, and sometimes I kind of deviate from the topic, I apologize, but there's probably somebody in here that's like, how do I get into the industry? How do I start? I just wanted to say I always suggest that it's important to become an advocate first. There's a lot of history behind this plant about how we got to where we are right now, and it's great to join the people that are doing the hard work so we can have a really sustainable, fruitful, and inclusive industry for everybody. So I just wanted to talk about, you know, when I first got started speaking at town halls, being an advocate, that was something that I had to do first before I actually got into actually having a company within the cannabis industry. So then the other thing that I wanted to share is I'm also a patient. I'm a medical patient. I was growing for myself. And the problem that I was having was trying to figure out how to grow taller sativa strains in my basement. My basement's got about 7 feet of height. At the time, I was doing a lot of research on how to train my plant, and learned a lot throughout that process. So what I'd like to do is to share with you my learning process of what I learned that eventually got me into the industry. And that's a picture of me in the lab. But basically, in my lab, I'm in a basement setup, so I don't have a lot of height. I have about 7 feet. There's probably some people in here that grow with grow tents. Do we have any commercial growers in here? Any residential growers, just so I kind of understand the room a little bit? Excellent. Okay, so mainly residential growers. So you're dealing with the issue of trying to deal with grow tents, small spaces. At the time, I was traveling a lot, and I couldn't get to my plants every day. So in order to train my plants, I needed to come up with a different alternative. But to start, it was all about learning how to just train your plant manually by hand. The reason why you want to train your plant is because most overhead lighting systems, almost all of them, are not strong enough to get light to go down to the bottom of the canopy. So by bottom of the canopy, I mean this area down here. You get most of your light penetration at the top, which is the reason why a lot of people wind up cutting their lower branches away so that they can keep that light focused on the top canopy. And that works good. It definitely will increase your yield if you do it that way, if you use other processes, other methods, and I'll cover those in the next few slides. But the goal for me was to control height. The goal for some other people is to control height and to increase yield. Plant training, manual or automated, will do it for you, for sure. One of the first training techniques that I looked into was called topping, also known as fimming. The FIM, anyone know what FIM stands for? Go ahead and yell it out. We're all adults. Nice. So yeah, when you're trying to top a plant, you want to cut at in a certain spot at a certain location. On the next slide, I'm going to show you a really quick video that I did about how to top a plant. Some of the methods that I use, couple of methods. But Every training technique has its pros and has its cons. So I just wanted to point those out for you, for people that are looking for what method works best for them. But topping works great. And what topping actually does is it removes what's called, the apical dominant meristem. What does that mean? It's the top of the plant. The top of the plant. The top of the plant is always looking for the most light. It's going to grow in the direction where it gets the most light. All of the side branches that come off of the plant, they're also looking for light too. But the one that gets the most light is the one that's in charge. The branch that gets the most light is the branch that is in charge. So if you go to the top of the plant, the one that's getting the most light, and you cut it at the base of the stem there, what happens is that winds up splitting into two. And now those two both become the main stem. You get two buds instead of one. You can do that a few times. You can top as many times as you want, although I would suggest that you don't do it any more than three times. That's probably the maximum. If you top it too much, you'll start to freak out your plants. You'll start to stress them too much. So one of the pros is that you will definitely increase your yield by topping your plant, because every time you top, you create you create double the bud sites, but you can't do it too much. So that's where the whole issue of the pro of yield increase, you'll get that, but human error, and you're stressing it, so you're adding additional time to the grow. And I'll talk a little bit more about stress and time and how that kind of affects the plant in a few slides. Hopefully this plays smoothly. Come on, baby. Double check this. My apologies.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you say top 3 times, like maximum,
Mm-hmm.
when you top the first time, you get 2.
Yeah.
Is the second ones, you top both of them?
You can.
And then you can do
You'll
that
get.
another time?
Yeah. It's exponential.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Kind of like cheating a manifold, right?
Yep, kind of. Well, this doesn't look like it's going to play, which is unfortunate, because I really wanted to show you guys. Let me see if I can try something else. I'll move forward, and at the end, if I have more time, I'll try to pull up my YouTube channel and show you the video there. But basically what I'm doing is, and if you go to our YouTube channel, or Trella.io is the company, but we have a YouTube channel. I'm cutting the top of that stem right there, and then creating 2 shoots that you see kind of here on the left. So I cut at the base, and now I have 2 colas. And you can do that process, I'd say 3 times is max, but you'll get a lot of bud sites doing it that way. The other method is super cropping. This one I learned about, but it just didn't really suit me well, because what you have to do is you actually have to bend and force the plant down, so that you're trying to spread out the canopy. So you're bending the branches in different directions, so you spread out the canopy. What that does is, instead of having one main plant that and the stem, the meristem that gets all, I hate talking with mics, that gets all the light at the top, when you bend them all out, they all get the same amount of light, so they all think that they're in charge, and then you get big colocytes from every branch that you bend down. So instead of chopping off the top, you're essentially leveling the playing field and allowing every branch that you bend down to become its own cola as well. Great for light efficiency, especially if you have a nice lighting system and you want to try to utilize all that light that's coming down out of your light, spreading it out and making sure that you're using the most out of your light. This is a good process for that. If you're a residential grower, like the majority of people in this room, plant count is a major concern. So this is also a very good method to use if you don't have the luxury of adding more plants to increase your yield. So people can do some of these things in combination. You can super crop, you can top, and then on the next slide I'll show you scrogging, screen green. Now this is probably the one that people use the most. This is the one that I've seen used in a commercial setting as well. So what you're doing is you're bending the plant out in different directions and then using a screen at the top to kind of create your even plane. So you're trying to create a canopy along this area. But again, if you can take a look at the pictures down here at the bottom, in order to do this, you have to cut off those lower branches. Does anybody know why people cut those lower branches off? Anyone want to shout it out?
More nutrients to the top.
One more time?
More nutrients to the top.
Yeah, you don't want to waste those nutrients to those bottom branches. The bottom branches are not going to get enough light. So a lot of people think, well, what's the point in feeding them nutrients and water if they're not going to get the other thing that they really need, light, to be a very fruitful and bountiful cola? So you cut the branches off and you get rid of them. That causes stress whenever you cut a plant, whenever you trim a plant, whenever you super crop bend a plant, you're too aggressive, you're stressing the plant. And I'll talk a little bit more about stress in a few slides. But I really want to drive it home that stress is a key factor in how you're training your plants. When it comes to doing this method, it's a little bit more gentle than super cropping, but it still requires some stress as well. Any questions before I go past this method?
Yeah, which one do you think would yield quicker?
Quicker.
The quickest of all these?
We haven't gotten to it yet. I'll tell you about that one for sure. Next one.
What about timing? When would be the best time to modify?
Trim off the. So you should do that in the veg cycle. I would suggest not too close to your flowering flip. I usually, and everybody, that's the thing about plants. Everyone grows them differently. So you may talk to another grower and they'll have a different, suggestion. But for me, I try not to do any trimming or any cutting at least 2 to 3 weeks before I flip it in the flower. Then when it flips in the flower, you get about 2 to 3 weeks of stretching where the branches just start to stretch. And what they're doing is they're saying to themselves, all right, the plant knows it's got a limited time on this earth. Time to start making making the most out of itself. So the branches start to stretch, they get very aggressive. And while they're stretching, you're training it along that trellis. That's when it starts to stretch, you just bend it down and keep it going along that trellis. It does take time. You have to be there, every couple of days. If you don't stay on top of it, especially some strains that grow really aggressively, if you don't stay on top of it, you'll come back and all of your branches have started growing up and doing their own thing again. Certain branches start to become the apical dominant branch, and so you really want to make sure that you're on top of that process.
How many weeks old are you before you start cropping?
I don't go by weeks, I go by nodes. So I go by, and by nodes I mean, this whole video would have said that for you, I apologize. But nodes are, so every time a new leaf comes out, that's a node there. So just for people who may not know the terminology, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. A node is wherever you start to get a new branch coming out. It's the intersection of where the branch hits the main stem. So this is my node right here. This is my node. So I typically like to count 3 nodes before I top. So 3 to 5 nodes. All right. Sea of green. This isn't really a training method, it's just a growing method, really. I wouldn't call it a training method, it's a growing method. Sea of green includes the use of taking a lot of small plants and growing them to a very short height, a very short time frame over that veg cycle, and then flipping them into flower. So basically what you're doing is you're just doing it very quickly with a lot of small plants. You can have like 1 plant every 1 square foot. You can keep them very, very close together. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating, a screen of green, but you're doing it with a bunch of plants. If you're a residential grower, especially in Massachusetts, this is not going to work for you because you have a 6 or 12 plant count limitation. If you're in New Mexico or if you're, in Maine and a caregiver, same problems. I don't know if there's anyone else from a different state, but plant count is definitely a concern for some of us. So this method works great from a commercial perspective, but it doesn't work very well from a residential perspective. The other thing to know about Sea of Green is that it doesn't work very well for every strain. Some strains require a longer veg time. They prefer a more time to develop themselves. So if you flip them into flower too soon, you won't get the right, terpene profile. You won't get the right cannabinoid profile. So you definitely want to make sure that you're picking. If you're going to go with Sea Green, you're going to want to stay with indicas that grow short and keep themselves, with small veg times. So, low stress training, and this is to answer your question about time. To me, in regards to saving time, low stress training is the one that moves the fastest, but that's only if you can stay on top of it all the time, like every day. So the difference between the other methods, scrog, super cropping, they're considered high stress. Because you're clipping them. Because you're causing a lot of physical stress to the plant. This is considered low stress because you're just gently bending the plant in a direction and then tying it down with wires, ropes, cables. People have all types of like crazy ways that they can do this. I've seen people that grow them in spirals. People make bonsai trees out of them doing it this way. It's an art form and for some people. People, take time and they love it and they really get into it. So for me, low stress training was the one that I kind of, was drawn to, simply because it was low stress and it doesn't freak the plant out to the point where you're actually slowing down the rate of growth. A lot of pros and not as many cons, in my opinion, as well. A lot of the pros are that because you're spreading it out, you're utilizing your light more efficiently. You're utilizing your space more efficiently because you're keeping the height down. So if you're in a location where you can do multiple levels, you can maybe get 2 levels out of it. Because you're making the most out of one plant, you don't have to have a high plant count. So for residential growers dealing with plant count limitations, it's also a very good method. And obviously it increases yield. The thing about it, though, is that you have to stay on top of it, because you can't go away for a few days and then come back. And now so what happens is as you're training it sideways, constantly, that apex, that's the apex right there. And if I can get my hand to be straight, there it is. It keeps trying to turn up. It's going to want to turn up like 6 hours after you bend it down. So you really have to be there every day to constantly keep that thing from wanting to really turn up. Because if it turns up too much and you come back 3 days later to try to bend it back down, you're stressing it again. You remove the low stress and now you're putting yourself back close to high stress. Especially if you're growing hydroponically or growing in soil, and that's another thing. So whenever you're modifying, you're manipulating your plants, you're touching your plants, you're moving your plants. If you're in soil, you don't want to do it right after you watered the plant. After you water the plant has a lot of water in its branches, and the pressure that the plant cells feel have a lot of pressure pushing against the branch. So they're stiff, they're hard, and when you bend them, they snap. So typically people will do a lot of their manipulation right before they water it, when the water pressure within the branches and within the vessels of the plant are lowest, and you're not likely to snap them. So just another tip. All right, so stress and the effects of stress. So this is getting into that high versus low. There are all types of stress. In a scientific, perspective, they call them abiotic or biotic stresses. So you have some like drought, temperature, wind, animals, and human contact. So those types of stresses are things that are kind of outside of the plant. It's the plant's environment. Whereas biotic stresses are things that kind of affect the innards of the plant, the biology of the plant. So that's bacteria, parasites, fungi, pests. All of these things can cause stress. Now, just like, plants are always teaching us how we should, in my opinion, I'm a George Washington Carver fan. He understands that by hanging out with plants, hanging out in nature, you can actually learn and use that for your own life, in your own life lessons. So one of the things that I always think is great about stress when it comes to plant is that it always reminds me that stress is good to a point. And then you have to relieve that stress because you're causing damage to the plant and you're causing damage to yourself. So it's a reminder for me as well. But different types of stress will cause different types of effects. In some cases, you can stress it to a benefit, where some people might use extreme temperatures or different light configurations to increase yield, increase potency. So you can play around with some of these environmentals to get what you want, but if you do it to an excess, you'll wind up actually, killing or damaging your plants. So you want to be careful about it. But it can create positive or negative effects. The effect of human contact, of constantly bending your plant, that's one of those stresses that we can try to alleviate and remove. Because if you're, let's say you're a commercial grower or you have someone helping you maintain your grow, when they touch the plant, when they interact with the plant, when they bend the plant, they're going to bend it a little bit differently than you did. They're going to bend it with more force than you did. So everybody that interacts with the plant will interact with it differently. So for people that are looking for consistent results, consistent terpene profiles, consistent cannabinoid profiles, you want to make sure that you're training it consistently so that you're not getting different results, especially for people that are using it for medicine. So time, when it comes to time, different training techniques have different time results. Low stress, when you have high stress, another thing is that, plants, they're systems. And when they're growing, they're constantly evaluating themselves and creating new programs on where should I send the water, where should I send the nutrients, where should I send this chemical or that. So when you cut a branch, you've changed the system, you've changed the framework, so a new code needs to be developed, a new program needs to be developed for that plant. And while it's developing that new code and that new program, it's stalling its growth. It's saying to itself, whoa, wait a minute, I had 3 nodes, now I have 2. How am I going to figure this out? So you're wasting about 3 or 4 days every time you cut or trim or top a plant, and sometimes maybe even a week if you do it too excessively. So you're actually prolonging the time that it takes for your plant to grow when you're using those high-stress techniques like super cropping, topping, and scrogging to some degree. So sea of green, because you're not stressing the plant, you're just shortening the veg time. Obviously has the shortest amount of time, but again, it can't be used for all types of plants, so that's something to consider. Scrogging, I've seen a 4x4, it's like 4x4 setup. This guy did an awesome job, and I sent him a message on Instagram, and I said, how long did it take you to do that? He goes, 4 months, and he was excited because he does it for the love. But if you're doing it because you're trying to increase your yield throughout the year and you want to get your cycles faster, it does take a lot of time to bend those branches out to fill that 4 foot by 4 foot canopy space. So something to consider. On the right, what I'm showing is some of our company information and some of some based on industry standards and industry averages of basically what you can assume to get out of screen of green versus sea of green. We have some of this information on our website. I'll make sure to put that information up there so you can download the PDF version that has all of this information and take a look at it as well. If you go to Trella.io, and you'll see a subscription, like subscribe and to download the sustainable farming study. You can download that and you'll be able to get the complete PDF. It's a 2-page PDF that shows all this information. So what I did is after I went through a bunch of the different methods, I tried to evaluate which one works best for me, look at the pros and cons of all of them, and they all seem to have the same pros, but there are some cons that they each have. So to me, as a grower, and as looking at this from an industry perspective, trying to figure out what are the solutions that we can come up with that will reduce the cons as much as possible and increase the pros. So what we came up with is let's just low stress train the plants. Train them to grow horizontally in one direction. When I bend it that way, when I train it to grow horizontally in one direction, I don't have to cut my bottom branches away because they all get access to the light. So just naturally, by plant count, by plant, one plant at a time, you're increasing your yield because you're not cutting away all those lower branches. So if you're an individual that does that right now and you can say to yourself in your head, I think I cut away about 20% or 30% of my branches, that's 20% or 30% of your potential yield if you can lay the plant down sideways and keep those branches intact and make sure that they all get light. So just a little bit about the Petrella Design. So what we did, because I was traveling so much, I couldn't do it all the time. We automated the process where we hold the plant at one end, at the main stem, and then we let the top, that apical dominant stem, come through this opening, and then over time, it just slowly moves down this track. So what's going on is that there's a circle in there with the apex popping through, and there are sensors in there that are actually sensing how much foliage is starting to accumulate there, and when it gets to be to the point that it's too much, it moves down the track. And it does it very slowly because, again, we're trying to do it with low stress. We don't want to move too much. We don't want to move too fast. So we do like an 1/8 of an inch increment at a time. And then eventually you get to the point where the plant has stretched itself all the way out through the whole chamber. So that dimension can vary depending on the size of the model. So, that's a 6 foot dimension right there. And by 6 feet, I mean in this direction. And you can shorten it and do 4, as well. Or even do larger if you're really looking to do it. I was talking to a grower on Friday, and the method of training your plant to grow sideways is not new. It's not new. We've been doing this for millennia, since the beginning of our agri-industry. I had a grower the other day tell me, he goes, yeah, I used to grow them up to about 6 feet and then bend the top of it down and put a rock on it, and that was how he kind of created his horizontal grow. Yeah. I'd like to see that. And then I heard other people that said, we just tipped it on its side and put some trash cans underneath of it to keep it off the ground and called it a day. So the idea of growing your plant sideways is not a new idea. What we did is we just said, how can we automate it for people that don't have the time or the skills to do it every day or every other day? So once it gets all the way down to that end of that chamber, we just take the top, there's a mesh panel on the top, we take the top of that mesh panel off, and we let, during that stretch phase that I talked about, the 2 to 3 weeks, when the plant knows that it's time to go, all those branches start stretching up towards the light, and then we can trellis it out nicely. I'm going to skip this slide and just go to YouTube if I can, and rely on that because I'm assuming that the video won't work. Uh-oh. And I'm wrong. Yes. Okay. So this here is just a demonstration of how that works with an actual prototype that we developed. My apologies. I hit the wrong button. I'll let it play through all the way without talking over it, and then I'll explain to you what you're seeing because there's a lot going on. So to explain it a little bit more, just to kind of get this out of your eye vision issue, the things you see going back and forth right here, those are fans. We added a series of fans to our design, but this is the prototype. On the actual production model, you can see the fans are actually located underneath, and they go back and forth under the plant versus on the side. So in our future videos, our future product, you won't see the fans on the sides, you'll see the fans on the underside. But really what you were seeing was that opening that was sensing how much foliage was accumulating there and just moving down the track, over time. If you're interested to know, how long did that take, all that information, that sustainable farming PDF that I talked about, it has all that information in there. So this is the end of my talk, but I wanted to pull up the video. If anyone's interested to see the topping video, I can pull that up and we can talk a little bit more about it. But we're over at booth 210, and if you would like to continue this conversation, talk a little bit more about plant training, about Trella Grow LSD, learn more about that, please come see us at booth 210. That sustainable farming yield comparison study, if you go to booth 10, we have it printed out, so you can just grab a copy there if you want to grab a copy. And then you can also subscribe and follow us and check us out at Trella.io. We do a lot of behind the scenes video, a lot of Instagram stuff, so follow us on Instagram. But lastly, before I go, we're also open for public investment. Anybody in the public can invest in Trella Technologies. We're using a program that's called regulation crowdfunding. It's similar to Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but this is specifically for investment, and it's open to the public. It's SEC regulated, federally regulated, because we are not, a hands-on cannabis company. We're allowed to actually utilize this process. So please take a look at Trella.io, click the invest button. You'll learn more about what we plan to do in the future, our financials, our business model, all of that information. And the other thing about this investment opportunity, because it's open to the public, there's a portal for you to see all this information, and if you have any questions about the terms or the company, there's a way for you to put questions in there, and I or myself or my co-founder Dre will definitely answer those questions for you. But we're also on social media, so if we have time, do we have time?
We do.
I want to open it up for Q&A, and then if the Q&A stalls, maybe I can try to show that video, the topping video. Or let me just ask the room real quick if you don't mind. Would you guys prefer to see the video or Q&A? Just shout it out. Video, Q&A. Video, yeah. All right.
I think they want both. You want both, right?
Yeah,
If this is connected to the internet,
This is
I hope.
awesome. Is Asia not oh, come on. Kudos to Asia.
Thank you very much. I apologize that it's not working. I'm going to see if I can go back and get it to work again.
Maybe we can do a tech.
No, too far. Ah, here we go. It's playing. Just took some time to download, I think. So right now I'm just trimming the bottom branches. Some people would probably have trimmed more, but again, I'm skittish when it comes to damaging and cutting my plant and stressing it out. So I only cut off about a couple of branches at the bottom. Now I'm separating that top so I can get to it real easily. Yeah. I'm separating that top and trying to get right to it, and it'll zoom in a little bit. But you want the very, very top where the split kind of stops.
You have to be really careful of the pistols too.
Yeah, you do. You don't want to. You don't want to bend them too much. So I want to cut right there where my finger is pointing. So I'll grab my right there, right at that intersection is where I'm going to place my cut. And that's George Washington Carver in the back, in case you were wondering if that's my granddad or something. It's not. There you go. She's been topped. So what I did, I actually did this twice. I did 2 cycles on this. I topped it again about 3 to 4 weeks later, and then I scrolled it out, and that's the top. And then what I did is I went, I probably could have gone even closer. There's another split. So if I really wanted to get it again, I could have gone and saved the whole node and cut it right there instead.
Did you ever cut it right where the nodes meet?
I've never done that.
Split up?
No, I haven't done that. That's almost like that FEM technique, is when you kind of go a little bit too deep and you wind up cutting below the node or at the node. But yeah, and that was a Congo strain. And then that plant is the same plant as, sorry, my pink LEDs. These are this is my cheap side. I bought a couple of it, Amazon LEDs, like $200. I was like, let's just see how this works. But yeah, so I actually topped that one. That's the same plant that I just showed in the video, but this is after topping it again and then spreading it out over a few weeks. So there it is. And then
How long do you veg stump?
when it comes to my own growing for myself, I kind of look at the plant. I let it tell me. Yeah, I let it tell me. It's very interesting just to get back into that whole how plants kind of talk to you and kind of tell you what they want. If you're with your plant, every day, it talks to you, it tells you. You can see when it's sad. You can see when it's you can see when it's sad. You can see when it's happy. Something's not right. It's unbalanced. I'm unbalanced. You unbalanced. Am I the one creating the imbalance? There's so much when it comes to and not to get too spiritual, because I don't want to drive anybody away. But you wind up connecting to the plant on that level where it just talks to you and it tells you what it wants to do. So yeah, that was the other video. So questions. The back.
Do you guys have any numbers as far as yield per plant? If you're using plenty low stress strain, your system, or as opposed to a stock?
Yeah, we do. So come through to the booth 210, pick up the sustainable farming study, and there we show how we do. So growing in our lab, and again, we are a startup company. We, myself and my co-founder went to Northeastern University. We are both engineers by degree, and we said, I wonder if this is something that we can do together. So we bootstrapped, and we went out and we bought some equipment. And we didn't buy the high-end equipment. We bought residential, equipment, and we tried our best. And we came up with, 4 iterations before we got to the point to where we are now. So based on all of our results, we're getting 2.2 ounces per square foot. So if you look at our sustainable farming study, you'll see that number there as well. What we really want to do, what we're really getting excited about doing, is putting our product, the Trella Grow LSD, into the hands of some of the commercial growers that have things fine-tuned, and they've got all their numbers keyed in, to see how does it do then. Because I'm pretty confident, and I hope that I'm not incorrect, but I'm pretty confident that they'll kill that 2.2 number and boost it up there for us.
How big is that machine?
It depends on the size. So
you
we
make
can,
different sizes.
yeah, because we're at the beginning stages of trying to develop this, we've got flexibility. We want to be able to do custom sizes for some people if we need to, but we have 2x4. One more time?
To fit certain tent sizes and whatnot?
Oh yeah, or commercial needs. Some people have smaller needs, and residential growers may have smaller needs. So we do have a 2-foot by 4-foot canopy area, and we got a 2-foot by 6. Everything that I've been showing you has been our 2x6.
So even if you're going horizontal, there's probably a minimum that you want to do this. Right?
Yeah.
For it to be worth the effort.
I would say past 3, when you 3 feet, I wouldn't make a unit that's 2x3. I think that's kind of almost a waste of time. Yeah. Anything else?
Go check.
Yeah, go ahead.
And how many plants were in the one that you showed?
That was one plant. So yeah, just to go back to that.
But you can't put more
You could, depending on the strain, but I wouldn't suggest it because you don't want it to get too congested in there to the point where they're fighting one another.
Yeah, choke it out.
And what we wanted to do was to have this really rely on less plants for two reasons. Regulations, waste. When we get this industry going, we can't keep these we can't keep these methods that just don't account for how much waste we're creating. Not labor waste, I'm talking about materials. When you do things like Sea of Green, don't get me wrong, it's a great process, but you need a lot of mother plants because you have to have a lot of cuttings so that you can keep that room supplied constantly with plants. For people that are commercial growers, they need RFID tags for every plant that you have. So now you need more tags, you need more dripping stations, you need more rock cubes, all that stuff.
So that's, so you typically you start with the clone and you see these?
No. So the one that you saw, the time-lapse video that I wanted to show, that was a Nepalese Jamaican strain from clone. That was from clone.
Okay.
But we also go from seed.
All right.
Yeah, you can do either or. And we also wanted to, where did it go? There we go. Let's just go back to that again. How are we doing on time?
Do you find one to be easier to train than the other, seedling or clone?
12 minutes.
Okay.
Basically, I'm asking, does one train better than the other?
Yes, some of them are easier than the others, but when it comes to what we did is we did 2 sour diesels. They're not too aggressive, but they are a little branchy. We did a Master Kush that was very bushy. And then we did this Nepalese Jamaican strain. So I went to a guy that I met, a grower, and he was really into land-raised sativa strains. And I told him, give me the sativa that you think will be the most aggressive with branching. Well, because some of these plants will just branch off, once or twice, but some of them start branching off again off that other branch. So this Nepalese Jamaican was one of those plants that's kind of aggressive. It has a lot of branches. It comes out in a lot of directions. And that's what we have there. So that's one plant right there.
That's amazing.
That's one plant.
That is just simply amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do.
That's really incredible.
And we're looking for feedback. I mean, like I said, we're engineers. I've been growing for myself for about 4 years, but there's so much knowledge out there. There's so much knowledge out there, and we only scrape the surface. So if you're a grower and you're looking at this and you're wondering, I wonder if they thought about this, did they not think about that? We may not have. Talk to us, email us, ask us questions, because we want to know, we want to hear. In the back? No?
How are you managing culling out the strongest girls from not the strongest girls when you only start with one?
Ugh.
Part of the reason of having Sea of Green or having multiple plants is you can kill the bad ones, let the good ones come, move them around. I mean, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. What if that clone is not the strongest or that seed wasn't exactly what you anticipated it to be? How are we managing that?
So you don't have to put it in right away. You can let it clone, but typically I wait until the plant's 12 inches high. So I do all that out here.
Okay.
And then when it's 12 inches high, or a little bit more,
You're
I take
ready
it
to
in and
go,
I put it in there.
And what's the growing medium? What is this growing in right now?
So this example is deep water, recirculating deep water culture, but we designed it so that you can use soil, hydro, aero, lights, any lights you want to use. The lights don't come with the system. You can use LED, CMH, HPS. From our brand, our mission, our vision is about sustainability. So we are in support of the LED industry. We hope that they can really, keep improving like they are. They've got a little bit more work to do, but we think they can do it, and we hope they can.
Is that what you use for this?
This is LED.
Okay.
This is LED. So these are our cheap LEDs. We had 3 LEDs over the top of the plant. And what I actually wound up doing, I had 1, 2, 3, kind of going over that 6-foot dimension. And when the plant was all the way to the left, so you can kind of see there's like 3 lights there, and I have a little small one that's branching the 2 to give me, because I wanted to get an even light distribution across the whole thing. So what we wound up doing is when it was all the way at the left, we only turned the light on that was at the left. Because I'm growing in my home. My wife is sitting back there. I'm paying an electricity bill. She's not psyched. So I said, all right, well, let me see if I can I'll turn off the lights that are to the right because it's LED. Those are that profile is typically straight down. No need to spend electricity. So you can see it's kind of dark over there, and then eventually it brightens up. Or maybe that kind of happened before, my apologies. But yeah, we didn't turn on the lights until we really needed to. So we saved on energy costs as well. So what we want to do, talking about that next gen, what we're going to do next level type of stuff, is to sync your lights. So you provide the lights, and then we provide some sort of interface so that you can sync your lights to the growth rate of the plant and do the same thing without having to be there. Yep.
How much does a unit like that cost?
So our price ranges right now between $3,000 to $3,500, and that's just for one unit. But if you're doing, large scale, you're growing, a few more plants, we're open to talking. Again, this is startup right now. Things change. What we really want to do is try to get that price point down as low as we possibly can, so that we can start to spread this out to other people. If you look at you look at About Us, if you've heard us before, if you know what we're about really trying to figure out a way to give the residential and craft cultivators a leg up to be able to keep up with big pharma and those larger corporations when they eventually come. So these types of things, being efficient and being a little bit more forward thinking are the ways that smaller growers can try to keep themselves, in business for longer. So, but we got to get that price point down.
What's the power requirement for one of those machines?
Less than a laptop. We're running DC motors. We're not pulling a lot of power out of that thing at all.
That's awesome. I'm amazed by that.
Yep. Okay.
So that's a 6x2 unit, correct?
That's right.
What kind of yield did you get? What are you showing right there in terms of yield?
Oh man, I'd have to look at that. I don't know if we were at 2 pounds or something like that. I'd have to look at it again. Yeah. Yeah.
You were talking 2 ounces per square foot, right? So you talked 6 by square foot there.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you pulled a pound and a half over that?
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is, so what we do when we do our yield results, we take out the main stem and the large leaves, and we keep all the plant material, because it's all biomass. Especially when you're talking about like the hemp industry, they want everything. They want all the plant biomass. So that yield from their perspective might be even higher. Anything else? Sweet. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Please come through the 210. Invest. We'd love you to be a part of the team.
Did I not tell you that was going to be awesome? Thank you so much, Asia Atwood, Trella Technologies, booth number 210. Go visit her.